He slammed a stack of hundreds on the white tablecloth. $7,000, cold, hard cash. The man was Alessio D'Amato, the Capo of the New York waterfront. A man who didn't ask for things. He took them. He looked at the trembling waitress and laughed. A dark, dangerous sound that silenced the entire restaurant. "I'll give you $7,000 if you address me in Neapolitan," he sneered, mocking her American accent. He thought he was buying her humiliation. He didn't know he was buying his own destruction. Because that waitress? She didn't just speak the language. She knew the secrets buried in the old country that could burn his empire to the ground. This is the story of how a simple bet started a war. The air inside Ristorante Bartolomeo was always cold, kept at a frigid 68 degrees to accommodate the men in thick wool suits who sat in the back corner. Sofia Ricci adjusted her apron, her fingers trembling slightly as she smoothed the fabric over her waist. She had been working at the high-end Manhattan establishment for 3 months, just long enough to know the unspoken rules. Rule number 1. The customer is always right. Rule number 2. Never look the men at table 4 in the eye for longer than a second. Tonight, table 4 was occupied by Alessio D'Amato. Even if you didn't read the papers, you knew Alessio. He wasn't the kind of mobster who hid in the shadows. He was the new generation, 34 years old, handsome in a way that felt predatory, with eyes the color of burnt espresso and a jawline that looked like it had been carved from marble. He wore bespoke suits from Milan and carried himself with the lethal grace of a panther that had already eaten but might kill just for the sport. Beside him sat his underboss, a thick-necked man named Marco the Bull Vitti, and a few other associates who laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny. "Wine," Alessio said. He didn't look up from his plate of osso buco. He just held his glass out in the air, expecting it to be filled. Sofia stepped forward, the bottle of Barolo heavy in her hand. She poured steadily, praying her wrist wouldn't betray her anxiety. The restaurant was silent, the kind of silence that feels like a held breath. Everyone knew who Alessio was. They knew his father, the late Don Salvatore, had ruled the East Coast with an iron fist until his sudden heart attack last winter. Now Alessio was consolidating power, and he was known to be more ruthless than his father ever was. "Stop," Alessio commanded. Sofia froze, lifting the bottle. A single red drop ran down the neck of the glass. Alessio turned his head slowly, looking at her for the first time. His gaze crawled up her arm, over her uniform, and settled on her face. He smirked, a cruel twist of lips that didn't reach his eyes. "You're new," he said. His voice was smooth, like gravel in a silk bag. "Yes, sir," Sofia said, her voice barely a whisper. "Is everything to your liking?" Alessio leaned back, wiping his mouth with a linen napkin. He looked at Marco, then back at Sofia. "She speaks like a tourist." "Yes, sir." "No, sir. American girl. Boring." Marco chuckled, tearing a piece of bread. "They don't make them like they used to, boss. No fire. No culture." Sofia felt the heat rise in her cheeks. She needed this job. Her brother, Paolo, was in trouble again. Gambling debts that were spiraling out of control. She couldn't afford to lose these tips. She lowered her eyes, swallowing her pride. "I apologize if I offended you, sir," Sofia said, keeping her tone neutral. Alessio laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was sharp, mocking. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. He tossed it onto the table. It landed with a heavy thud, sliding next to the wine glass. "You apologize?" Alessio scoffed. He opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of crisp, $100 bills. He fanned them out on the table, the faces of Benjamin Franklin staring up under the dim chandelier light. "Count it," Alessio challenged, staring at her. Sofia didn't move. "Sir?" $7,000, Alessio said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming intimate and threatening all at once. "That's more than you make in 3 months serving pasta to tourists. I'll give you $7,000 right now, cash, if you address me in Neapolitan." The table erupted in laughter. Marco slapped the table. "Look at her face, boss. She thinks Neapolitan is an ice cream flavor." Alessio grinned, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Go on, bellissima. Say something. Tell me to go to hell. Tell me the food is cold. But say it in the dialect of my grandfather. Say it in the language of the streets of Naples." He leaned forward. The smell of expensive cologne and tobacco wafted toward her. "But you can't, can you?" You're just another pretty American girl, pretending to be Italian, because your last name ends in a vowel. Sofia looked at the money. $7,000. It was enough to pay off the first shark circling Paolo. It was enough to keep the wolves from the door for another month. She looked at Alessio. He was mocking her heritage, her identity. He saw a waitress. He didn't see Sofia Ricci, whose grandmother, Nonna Carmela, had raised her in a cramped apartment in Bensonhurst, refusing to speak a word of English inside the house. Nonna Carmela, who had fled the Ceneda district of Naples in 1968 with nothing but a suitcase and a secret. Sofia took a deep breath. Her posture changed. Her shoulders squared. The submissive waitress vanished, replaced by something older, something harder. She looked Alessio D'Amato dead in the eye. The restaurant went dead silent. The clinking of silverware stopped. Even the maitre d' by the door held his breath. Sofia didn't reach for the money. Instead, she stepped closer to the table, entering Alessio's personal space. Tu sei solo nu guapo e cartone, she said. Her voice wasn't the soft, polite soprano she used for customers. It was guttural, rhythmic, perfect. The dialect was thick, heavy with the specific cadence of the Rione Ceneda, the roughest, most authentic neighborhood in Naples. Alessio's smile vanished instantly. His eyes widened. Sofia wasn't done. She gestured to the money with a look of utter disdain. Tieniti, sti sorde. Non mi serve l'elemosina, e chi se credere ma non sape manco addossanta o mare. Keep your money. I don't need charity from someone who thinks he's a king but doesn't even know where the sea is. Marco choked on his bread. The other bodyguards stiffened, hands drifting toward their jackets, unsure if this was a threat they needed to neutralize. Alessio sat frozen. It wasn't just that she spoke the language. It was how she spoke it. It was the specific insults. Calling him a guapo, e cartone, a cardboard thug, a fake tough guy, that stung. It was the language of the old-timers, the men who built the organization before it went corporate. Sofia picked up the empty wine bottle, her face impassive. Will there be anything else, Don Alessio? Or are you done playing games? For 10 agonizing seconds, nobody moved. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Sofia's heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird, but she kept her face like stone. Nonna Carmela always said, "Never let a dog see you're afraid, or he'll bite." Then, a low rumble started in Alessio's chest. He started to laugh. But this time, it wasn't mocking. It was genuine, impressed, and terrified the staff even more. "Neapolitan," he muttered, shaking his head. "From the Ceneda, no less. Who the hell are you?" "I'm your waitress," Sofia said, reverting to English, though the edge remained in her voice. "And you have a bill to settle." Alessio looked at the money on the table. He scooped up the entire stack, the full 7,000, and shoved it into the pocket of Sofia's apron. "I don't want it," she tried to back away. "It wasn't a gift," Alessio said, standing up. He towered over her. Up close, the danger radiating off him was palpable. "I made a bet, I lost. A D'Amato always pays his debts." He leaned in close, his lips inches from her ear. "But now I have a new question. How does a girl named Sofia Ricci, working in a midtown tourist trap, speak the dialect of the old Camorra family so perfectly?" "My grandmother taught me," Sofia said stiffly. "Your grandmother?" Alessio mused. He stepped back, buttoning his jacket. "Tell me, does your grandmother have a name?" "Carmela," Sofia said. "Carmela Rossi." Alessio's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of recognition passing through them. Gone before Sofia could be sure she saw it. "Carmela Rossi," he repeated, tasting the name. "Well, Sofia Ricci, keep the money. You earned it. But don't think this conversation is over." He signaled to his men. "Andiamo." They swept out of the restaurant like a dark storm cloud, leaving Sofia standing there, with $7,000 burning a hole in her pocket, and a terrifying realization settling in her stomach. She'd just caught the eye of the devil. And he liked what he saw. The adrenaline crash hit Sofia the moment she got home to her small apartment in Queens. Her hands shook so badly she could barely unlock the door. "Paolo?" she called out. The apartment was a mess. Drawers were pulled open, papers scattered on the floor. Sofia's stomach dropped. She rushed to the living room. Paolo was sitting on the couch, holding an ice pack to his eye. His lip was split, and there was a dark bruise forming on his jaw. God, Paolo! Sofia dropped her bag and rushed to him. Who did this? Was it the Russians? Paolo winced, pulling away. It's fine, Sof. Just a warning. They said if I don't have $5,000 by Friday, they're going to break my legs. For real this time. Sofia stared at her brother. He was 22, brilliant but weak. He had their father's charm and their mother's inability to say no to a risk. Silently, Sofia reached into her apron, which she still hadn't taken off. She pulled out the stack of cash Alessio had forced on her. She peeled off $5,000 and slammed it on the coffee table. Paolo's good eye widened. Sof, where did you get this? Did you? He looked at her with sudden suspicion. You didn't do something stupid, did you? I won a bet, Sofia said, her voice hollow. Take it, pay them. And if you ever gamble again, I'll break your legs myself so the Russians don't have to. She went into her bedroom and closed the door, leaning her back against it. She slid down to the floor, pulling her knees to her chest. She pulled out her phone and Googled him. Alessio D'Amato. The results were endless. FBI investigates D'Amato construction links. Bodies found in Jersey marshlands, linked to D'Amato family. Alessio D'Amato, the Prince of New York. She scrolled through images of him at galas, leaving courthouses, always looking untouchable. Then she searched for something else. She typed in, Carmelo Rossi, Naples, 1968. Nothing. Just old genealogy records. She thought about the look in Alessio's eyes when she said her grandmother's name. Carmela Rossi. It was a common name. It shouldn't have meant anything. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Sofia hesitated, then answered. Hello? You left work early, the voice on the other end said. Sofia's blood ran cold. It was him. How did you get this number? She whispered. I own the building your restaurant is in, Sofia. I have the employee files. I have everything. Alessio's voice was calm, conversational, which made it infinitely more terrifying. I looked into your file. It says your grandmother is Carmela Rossi, but it doesn't say who your grandfather was. My grandfather died before I was born. In Italy. Is that what she told you? Alessio asked. There was the sound of a lighter clicking, then a slow exhale. Because I just got off the phone with my uncle in Naples. He says the only Carmela Rossi who mattered in the Sanita in the 60s was the wife of a man named Antonio, the butcher Vancini, a man who betrayed my grandfather. Sofia gripped the phone. I don't know what you're talking about. My name is Ricci. Your name is whatever you want it to be, Alessio said. But blood? Blood is history. And if you are Vancini's granddaughter, you and I have a very complicated problem, Sofia. I'm hanging up, Sofia said, panic rising in her throat. Don't, Alessio commanded. Look out your window. Sofia stood up, moving slowly to the window that overlooked the street. There, double parked under the street lamp, was a black Lincoln Navigator. Leaning against the hood, illuminated by the orange glow of the street lamp, was Alessio D'Amato. He was looking up, right at her window, holding his phone to his ear. Come downstairs, Sofia, he said. We need to talk. And bring the Neapolitan attitude. I have a feeling you're going to need it. Why? She asked, her hand on the glass. Because the Russians your brother owes money to, Alessio paused. They work for me. And since you paid them with my money, I figure we should cut out the middleman. Sofia stepped out of the apartment building into the humid New York night. The street was quiet, save for the distant wail of a siren and the low idle of the massive black Lincoln Navigator engine. The back door clicked open before she even reached it. Inside, the interior was like a cavern of black leather and soft blue ambient light. Alessio D'Amato sat on the far side, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He didn't look at her as she slid in. He just tapped the partition glass. Drive, Marco, he said. The car surged forward, smooth and silent. Sofia sat stiffly, clutching her purse. The smell. Inside the car was intoxicating. Expensive scotch, leather, and the faint metallic scent of a gun recently cleaned. Where are you taking me? Sofia asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Alessio finally turned to look at her. The streetlights flickered across his face, casting long shadows over his sharp cheekbones. To a place where we can discuss your family tree without your brother listening through the wall. Paolo is innocent in this, Sofia snapped. Paolo is a liability, Alessio corrected coldly. He owes 5,000 to the Petrov brothers. They are butchers, Sofia. They don't break legs, they cut off fingers. I bought his debt 10 minutes ago. Now he owes me. And unlike the Russians, I don't want money. Sofia felt the trap snap shut. What do you want? The truth. Alessio pressed a button, and a panel slid open, revealing a crystal decanter. He poured a second glass. Drink. You look like you're going to pass out. Sofia ignored the glass. I told you the truth. My grandmother is Carmela. She's old. She has dementia half the time. She cooks Sunday gravy and watches game shows. She isn't some mob wife. Alessio laughed softly. Carmela Rossi was the cleverest woman in Naples in 1968. If she has dementia, it's probably an act. He took a sip of his drink. Let me tell you a story, Sofia. A bedtime story. He shifted, his knee brushing against hers. Sofia flinched, but the space was too confined to move away. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through her that she resented. In 1968, Alessio began, his voice low and hypnotic. My grandfather, Don Vittorio D'Amato, ran the port of Naples. He had a right-hand man, Antonio Vancini. They called him the Butcher because of what he did with a cleaver to men who didn't pay. Sofia stared out the tinted window. The city was blurring by. They were heading toward the bridges, toward Long Island. Vancini was ambitious, Alessio continued. But he was also a thief. He didn't just steal money, Sofia. He stole the Libro Nero, the Black Book. It contained the names of every judge, politician, and police chief on the D'Amato payroll. It was the keys to the kingdom. One night, Vancini vanished, took the book, took the gold, and he took his wife, Carmela. Alessio turned to her, his eyes dark pits of intensity. My grandfather spent 30 years looking for them. He died without ever finding that book. If you are Vancini's granddaughter, that book is likely sitting in your attic collecting dust. That book, it could end my family. Or it could make me the king of America. I never knew a grandfather, Sofia whispered. Nona said he died in a factory accident. He died, Alessio confirmed, but not in a factory. My father found him in 1980 in Chicago. Put 2 bullets in his chest. But Vancini died laughing. He said the book was the only thing he ever loved. The car slowed down, turning onto a private gravel driveway lined with towering oak trees. They approached a massive wrought iron gate that swung open automatically. Carmela, Sofia realized aloud. Exactly, Alessio said. He left it with her. And now I've found her. The car stopped in front of a sprawling modern mansion that looked more like a fortress of glass and steel than a home. You can't go near her, Sofia said, panic rising. She's fragile. You'll kill her. I don't need to go near her, Alessio said, opening his door, because you're going to get it from me. And if I refuse? Alessio stepped out, then leaned back in, offering her a hand. His grip was firm, warm, and terrifyingly strong. Then Paolo's debt comes due, he said simply. And I am a very impatient creditor. Sofia looked at his hand. She thought about running. But they were miles from anywhere, surrounded by walls and armed men. She placed her hand in his. I'll do it, she lied. But Paolo stays safe. As long as you are useful, everyone stays safe, Alessio promised. He pulled her out of the car, pulling her slightly closer than necessary. For a moment, their chests almost touched. She could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Welcome to my home, Sofia, he murmured. Try not to break anything. Some of these statues are older than your country. As they walked toward the massive front doors, Sofia's mind raced. She had to warn Nona. But more importantly, she had to find out if the story was true. Because if the Libro Nero existed, Sofia wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was the heir to a legacy of blood. The next morning, Sofia woke up in a guest room that was larger than her entire apartment. The sheets were Egyptian cotton. the thread count so high it felt like sleeping on water. She had spent the night locked in. Not literally. The door was unlocked, but the armed guards patrolling the hallway were a clear enough message. She found a note on the bedside table. Breakfast on the terrace. Then we go shopping. Hey! Sofia showered quickly, scrubbing her skin, as if she could wash away the complication of her life. When she walked out onto the terrace, the view took her breath away. The Long Island Sound stretched out, glittering in the morning sun. Alessio was sitting at a glass table, reading a newspaper. He wore a casual white polo shirt and sunglasses, looking less like a mob boss and more like a tennis pro on vacation. Coffee, he said, gesturing to the silver pot. And eat. You're too thin. Italian women should have curves. I'm not your girlfriend, and I'm not your guest, Sofia said, pouring herself black coffee. I'm your hostage. Hostage is such an ugly word, Alessio smirked. Let's call it strategic asset protection. He folded the paper. Tonight is the wedding of Vincent Falcone's daughter. The Falcones are Switzerland. Neutral territory. Everyone will be there. Good for them, Sofia said, biting into a croissant. What does that have to do with me? You're coming with me, Alessio said. Sofia choked on a flake of pastry. What? Why? Because... Alessio stood up, walking to the edge of the balcony. My enemies know I found Vancini's granddaughter. Word travels fast. If I leave you alone, the Russians or the Triads will snatch you up to get to the book. If you are with me, on my arm, wearing my diamonds, they will know you are D'Amato property. It keeps you alive. Property? Sofia repeated, her voice dripping with acid. Is that all I am? Alessio turned, removing his sunglasses. His eyes swept over her, intense and unreadable. Until I have that book, yes. After that, we'll see. 3 hours later, the transformation, the shopping, wasn't shopping. It was a team of stylists descending on the mansion. They put Sofia in a gown of midnight blue silk that hugged every curve of her body, with a slit that ran dangerously high up her thigh. They styled her hair in old Hollywood waves and painted her lips a deep, blood red. When she walked down the grand staircase, Alessio was waiting at the bottom. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him so perfectly it looked like a second skin. He was adjusting his cufflinks, but he stopped when he saw her. For a moment, the mask slipped. The ruthless Capo disappeared, replaced by a man struck silent by beauty. He watched her descend, step by step. Well? Sofia asked when she reached the bottom, feeling self-conscious under his gaze. Dangerous, Alessio murmured. He reached out, taking a velvet box from his pocket. Turn around. Sofia turned. She felt his cold fingers against the nape of her neck as he fastened a necklace. She looked down. A teardrop diamond the size of a quail egg rested against her skin. This belonged to my mother, Alessio said, his voice quiet near her ear. Don't lose it. Why give me this? She asked, her breath hitching as his fingers lingered on her shoulder. Because tonight, you are playing a role. You are the woman who tamed the Wolf of New York. You need to look the part. The Falcone wedding. The reception was held at the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan. The ballroom was a sea of flowers, crystals, and men with bulges under their jackets. When Alessio entered with Sofia on his arm, the room seemed to tilt. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. Sofia felt hundreds of eyes on her, calculating, assessing, judging. She gripped Alessio's arm tighter. Head up, he whispered. You are a queen tonight. Look down on them. They moved through the crowd. Alessio introduced her only as Sofia, leaving the last name a mystery that drove the gossip mongers wild. They were near the bar when the air in the room changed. It became colder, sharper. Alessio, a voice called out, smooth, oily, and filled with false warmth. Alessio stiffened. His muscles turned to rock under Sofia's hand. Dante. A man stepped out of the crowd. Dante Moretti, the boss of the rival family. He was older than Alessio, perhaps 40, with silvering hair and a smile that showed too many teeth. He was handsome, but in the way a shark is handsome, sleek and devoid of soul. I didn't think you'd show, Dante said, clapping a hand on Alessio's shoulder. After the troubles at the docks last week. I'd love a wedding, Dante. Alessio smiled, but his eyes were deadly. It reminds me that even in our world, there are new beginnings. Dante's eyes slid to Sofia. He looked her up and down, lingering on the diamond necklace, then on her face. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second. And who is this lovely creature? Dante asked, taking Sofia's hand before she could pull away. He kissed her knuckles, his lips lingering too long. Sofia, Alessio said, his voice hard. This is Dante Moretti. He runs the garbage disposal business in Jersey. It was a deliberate insult. Dante ignored it. He was staring at Sofia with a look of intense recognition. Sofia, Dante repeated. You have very familiar eyes. Have we met? I don't think so, Sofia said, pulling her hand back. I'm a waitress. I don't run in these circles. A waitress? Dante chuckled. Alessio, you always did have a taste for the common folk. Like your father. Careful, Dante, Alessio warned. Save me a dance, Sofia, Dante said, winking. He leaned in, whispering so only she could hear. Questo è solo l'inizio, piccere. This is just the beginning, little one. Dante walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Sofia turned to Alessio, her heart pounding. He spoke Neapolitan. He speaks many things, Alessio said, his jaw clenched. But he was looking at you like he knew a ghost. Alessio, Sofia said, her voice trembling. He didn't just look at me. He looked at the necklace. But then he looked at my chin. My grandmother. She has a scar on her chin. A small one. Do I look like her? Alessio looked down at her. You look exactly like the photo in the police file from 1968, if Dante connects the dots. He knows, Sofia realized. That's what he meant. This is just the beginning. Suddenly, the lights in the ballroom dimmed. The band began to play a slow waltz. Dance with me, Alessio commanded. Now, we should leave. If we leave, we look weak. If we run, we look guilty. We dance. He pulled her onto the floor. His hand was firm on her waist, pulling her body flush against his. They moved together, a seamless unit. For a moment, the danger of Dante Moretti faded, replaced by the overwhelming physical presence of Alessio. He smelled of sandalwood and danger. Sofia looked up at him. You're enjoying this. Holding the most beautiful woman in the room? Alessio's gaze dropped to her lips. Yes, I am. I'm a job to you, she reminded him, though her voice lacked conviction. You were a job this morning, Alessio admitted. He spun her around, dipping her slightly. Now? Now you are a complication. I don't like complications. Usually I eliminate them. Are you going to eliminate me? Alessio pulled her back up, his face inches from hers. The music swelled. I'm afraid it's too late for that, Sofia. Because I think I'm starting to want to keep you. Before Sofia could respond, a waiter bumped into them. Scusi, signore. The waiter mumbled, keeping his head down. Alessio pushed Sofia behind him instantly, his hand going to his waistband. But the waiter wasn't attacking. He slipped a folded napkin into Alessio's hand and vanished into the crowd. Alessio stopped dancing. He unfolded the napkin. Written in red ink, or was it blood, was a message. 7 p.m., the kitchens. Bring the girl, or we send her brother's ear to the table. Alessio crushed the napkin in his fist. He looked at Sofia, his eyes filled with a terrifying rage. But this time, the rage wasn't directed at her. It was for her. They have Paolo, he said quietly. Here. In the hotel. Sofia grabbed his lapels. We have to go. We have to help him. We will, Alessio said. He buttoned his jacket, checking the gun hidden beneath the tuxedo. Stay behind me. If I say duck, you duck. If I say shoot. He slipped a small, cold pistol into her clutch bag. You shoot. I've never fired a gun. Point and pull, Sofia. Just like pouring wine. Steady hand. He took her hand, leading her away from the ballroom and toward the service doors. Welcome to the family business, he whispered. The service corridors of the Plaza Hotel were a stark contrast to the opulence of the ballroom. Where the upper levels smelled of lilies, expensive perfume, and champagne, the bowels of the hotel smelled of industrial cleaner, stale grease, and high-tension anxiety. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed with an irritating hum that seemed to amplify the pounding in Sofia's ears. Alessio moved with a terrifying efficiency. He didn't run, he stalked. His stride was long and silent, his tuxedo jacket unbuttoned to allow easy access to the weapon at his hip. Sofia struggled to keep up in her heels, her hand clutching the small, heavy purse that contained the pistol he had given her. Every click of her heel against the linoleum sounded like a gunshot in the empty hallway. Take your shoes off, Alessio whispered without looking back. His voice was tight, focused. Sofia didn't hesitate. She kicked off the designer heels, leaving them abandoned near a laundry cart. The cold tiles bit into her stockinged feet, but she moved faster now, silent as a ghost. The adrenaline was sharpening her senses. She could hear the distant clatter of pots, the hiss of steam, and the beat of her own heart. They reached the double-swinging doors of the main banquet kitchen. It should have been bustling with dozens of chefs plating the main course for the wedding. Instead, it was eerily silent. Alessio held up a hand, signaling her to stop. He pressed his ear to the cold metal of the door. Then he looked at Sofia. His eyes were dark, devoid of the playfulness from the dance floor. Stay by the door, he breathed, his lips barely moving. If anyone comes out who isn't me or Paolo, shoot them. Alessio, she started, her voice trembling. Don't hesitate, Sofia. Hesitation gets you killed. Go. He kicked the doors open and strode in, the movement aggressive and commanding. Sofia huddled by the doorframe, peeking through the small circular porthole window. The kitchen was a labyrinth of stainless steel counters, hanging copper pots, and massive industrial stoves. Steam rose from unattended pots of boiling water. In the center of the room, near the butchery station, 3 men were waiting. 2 were thick-necked enforcers, holding a young man who looked like he had gone 10 rounds with a prizefighter. Paolo! Sofia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a scream. Her brother's face was a mask of bruises. One eye was swollen shut, and blood trickled from his split lip. The third man was Dante Moretti. He was leaning casually against a prep table, eating a strawberry from a crystal bowl intended for a dessert display. He looked entirely at ease, as if he were at a cocktail party rather than a hostage negotiation. You're late, Alessio, Dante said, not even looking up. He bit into the fruit, red juice staining his lips. I said, 7 o'clock. It's 7:03. Traffic was murder. Alessio drawled, walking forward with his hands raised, palms open to show he wasn't reaching for a weapon yet. Let the boy go, Dante. He's a gambler, not a soldier. He doesn't know anything. He's collateral, Dante corrected, tossing the strawberry stem onto the pristine floor. He gestured to the 2 thugs holding Paolo. They tightened their grip, twisting Paolo's arm behind his back. Paolo groaned, his knees buckling. We have business to discuss, Dante said, wiping his hands on a linen napkin. Old business. Your shock. Grandfather's business. The Libro Nero, Alessio said, his voice flat. You still believe the fairy tales, Dante? You're chasing ghosts. It's no fairy tale, Dante snapped, his veneer of calm cracking. My father was on that list, Alessio. Mancini had proof that my father worked with the feds in '75 to save his own skin. That book doesn't just hold power. It holds shame. It holds the leverage to destroy the Moretti legacy. I want it. And I want it destroyed. And you think I have it? I think you found the girl. Dante pointed a finger at the door where Sofia was hiding. The Mancini girl. Bring her in. Alessio didn't move. He stood like a statue in the center of the kitchen. She's not here? I sent her home. Don't lie to me, Dante roared, his voice echoing off the tile walls. He pulled a silver handgun from his jacket and pressed the barrel hard against Paolo's temple. Bring her in, or I paint this kitchen with his brains. I'll count to 3. 1. Sofia didn't think. She didn't calculate, she just reacted. The image of the gun against her brother's head shattered her fear. She pushed the door open and stepped into the kitchen. Her bare feet made no sound on the floor. She held the clutch bag in front of her with both hands, gripping it so tightly her knuckles were white. "I'm here," she said, her voice ringing clear over the hum of the refrigerators. Dante turned, a smile spreading across his face. A shark sensing blood in the water. "Ah, the Principessa of the Sanita. Come closer." "Sofia, get out!" Paolo screamed, earning a pistol whip to the head from one of the thugs. He slumped forward, dazed. "Stop it!" Sofia yelled, her voice raising an octave. She walked forward until she was 10 feet from Dante. She looked him in the eye, channeling every ounce of Nonna Carmella's steel. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a Ricci. She was a Vancini. "You want the book?" she asked, her voice steadying. "I know where it is." Both Alessio and Dante looked at her. Alessio with a flash of surprise, Dante with naked greed. "Where?" Dante demanded, lowering the gun slightly. "Let my brother go. Walk him to the service elevator. Once he's gone, I'll tell you." Dante laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "You're in no position to bargain, little girl." "I am," Sofia said, stepping closer. "Because if you kill me, you never find it. And if you kill Paolo, I'll scream. I'll scream so loud the guests in the ballroom will hear. Do you really want a murder investigation at the Falcone wedding? The commission would skin you alive for bringing heat like that to a neutral sit-down." Dante's eye twitched. She had struck a nerve. A hit in a public hotel at a boss's daughter's wedding was a violation of the highest order. It was messy. It was amateur. He nodded to his men. "Let him go." The thugs released Paolo. He stumbled toward Sofia, clutching his ribs. "Go, Paolo," she whispered, her eyes never leaving Dante. "Run." "I'm not leaving you," he sobbed, tears mixing with the blood on his face. "Go," Alessio barked, his voice like a whip crack. "Get to the car. Marco is waiting at the loading dock." Paolo looked at Sofia one last time, a look of agony and gratitude, then scrambled out the back door, his footsteps fading down the corridor. "He's gone," Dante said, turning his gun fully toward Sofia. "Now, talk. Or I start shooting off toes." Sofia looked at Alessio. He gave her a barely perceptible nod. He was shifting his weight, tensing his legs. He was ready. "The book," Sofia said slowly, her hand sliding into her clutch bag, "is in hell." She pulled the trigger through the bag. Bang! The gun kicked hard in her hand, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet went wide, shattering a stack of ceramic plates behind Dante, sending shards flying like shrapnel. But the distraction was enough. Alessio moved. He lunged at Dante, tackling him into the stainless steel prep table. Pots, pans, and trays of silverware crashed to the floor with a cacophony that sounded like the end of the world. The two thugs raised their weapons, but Alessio was faster. He used Dante as a human shield, spinning him around. Bang! Bang! 2 shots rang out from Alessio's gun. One thug went down, clutching his leg, screaming. The other ducked behind the massive industrial stove. "Sofia! Down!" Alessio roared. Sofia dove under a stainless steel rolling cart, just as bullets sparked off the metal above her head. She curled into a ball, covering her ears. The kitchen turned into a war zone. Alessio and Dante were wrestling on the floor, a tangle of black tuxedos and fists. Dante was strong, desperate, but Alessio was younger and fueled by a cold, precise rage. He slammed Dante's head against the tile floor. Once. Twice. Dante went limp, his gun skittering across the floor. Alessio rolled off him, breathing hard, his shirt torn and bloodied. He grabbed his gun and fired 2 suppressive shots at the remaining thug pinned behind the stove. "Move!" Alessio grabbed Sofia's hand, pulling her up from under the cart with force. They sprinted toward the loading dock exit, bursting out into the cool night air. The black SUV was waiting, engine roaring, tires smoking. Marco threw the back door open before the car even fully stopped. They dove inside, just as the kitchen door flew open behind them. Bullets pinged off the armored glass of the SUV as it screeched away, tearing down the alleyway and merging into the chaotic New York traffic. Inside the car, silence reigned for a full minute. All that could be heard was their heavy, ragged breathing. Alessio looked at Sofia. Her hair was wild, her expensive dress was torn at the hem, her face was smudged with grease, and she was still holding the gun, her knuckles white as bone. He started to laugh. It was a breathless, incredulous laugh that bordered on hysteria. "You missed," he said, shaking his head. Sofia looked at the smoking hole in her clutch bag, then at him. "I hit the plates." "You hit the plates," he agreed, wiping blood from a cut on his lip with his thumb. "But you pulled the trigger." "You actually pulled the trigger." He looked at her with a new expression. It wasn't just desire anymore. It was profound respect. It was the look a king gives a queen. "Paolo is safe," Marco said from the front seat, his eyes checking the rearview mirror. "I put him in a cab to Jersey before you came out. He's going to your aunt's house. He's out of the life, Sofia." Sofia slumped back against the leather seat, the adrenaline crashing out of her system. She began to shake uncontrollably. Alessio reached over and gently pried the gun from her rigid fingers. He set it aside and pulled her into his arms. She didn't resist. She buried her face in his chest, smelling the gunpowder, sweat, and expensive cologne. "It's over," he whispered into her hair, kissing the top of her head. "No," Sofia said, her voice muffled against his shirt. She pulled back to look at him. "It's not. Dante thinks I know where the book is. He saw my face. He won't stop. He'll come for me. He'll come for Paolo." "Then we find it first," Alessio said, his eyes hardening. "You said you knew where it was in the kitchen. Was that a bluff?" Sofia looked out the window at the passing city lights, blurring into streaks of gold and red. "No," she said softly. "I remember now. Nana used to tell me stories about a pad recipe book she hid. She said it had the secret to the perfect sauce, but she never cooked from it. She said she buried it where the angels sleep." Alessio frowned. "Angels sleep? A cemetery? That could be anywhere in the 5 boroughs." "No," Sofia said, her eyes widening as the memory clicked into place, sharp and clear. "Not a cemetery. The angel statue. In the garden of the old house in Bensonhurst. We sold it 5 years ago, but the statue was too heavy to move. It's still there." Alessio tapped the glass partition. "Marco, change of plans. We're going to Brooklyn." The house in Bensonhurst was dark, a silhouette against the cloudy night sky. A for sale sign stood crookedly in the overgrown front yard. It was a modest brick house, a relic of a different time, surrounded by a chain-link fence. Alessio and Sofia moved through the shadows of the side yard. The air was thick with humidity and the smell of impending rain. The garden was a jungle of weeds and ivy, reclaiming the land. But there, in the far corner, stood the stone angel. It was weathered, covered in moss, its hands clasped in eternal prayer, watching over a patch of dirt that hadn't been touched in decades. "This is it," Sofia whispered, a chill running down her spine. Alessio handed Marco a shovel from the trunk. "Dig! Carefully!" Marco dug at the base of the statue. The sound of metal hitting dirt was the only noise in the quiet neighborhood. Scrape. Thud. Scrape. After 10 agonizing minutes, the shovel hit something hard. Clang! Marco knelt down and brushed away the dirt. He pulled out a metal lockbox, rusted shut and wrapped in decaying plastic. Alessio took the box. His hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly. He used the butt of his gun to smash the rusted lock. 1 strike. 2. The mechanism shattered. The lid creaked open. Inside, wrapped in layers of oilcloth, was a black leather notebook. The Libro Nero. Alessio picked it up with reverence. He opened the pages. They were yellowed and brittle, filled with handwritten names, dates, and amounts. It was a ledger of corruption spanning 3 decades. Judges, senators, police chiefs. It was a map of the city's skeleton. "This is it," Alessio murmured, scanning a page. "The end of Dante. The end of half the politicians in Albany. With this, I own the city." Suddenly, floodlights blinded them. "Drop it, Alessio!" Dante's voice boomed from the back porch of the house. He was standing there, battered, bloody, his tuxedo ruined, flanked by 4 men with automatic rifles. He had tracked the car. "I knew you'd come here," Dante sneered. limping down the porch steps. I put a tracker on your precious SUV while you were playing hero in the kitchen. Alessio shielded Sofia with his body. They were trapped, outgunned in a dead-end garden. Give me the book, and I kill you quickly, Dante offered, raising his hand. Burn it, and I kill the girl slowly. I'll make you watch. Alessio looked at the book in his hand. Then he looked at Sofia. He had spent his whole life chasing power. He was raised to believe that power was the only currency that mattered. This book was the ultimate power. It was the crown. But looking at Sofia, shivering in the night air, her eyes wide with fear but burning with trust, he realized something he hadn't expected. He didn't want to be the king if it meant ruling over a graveyard. He didn't want to be his father. You want the book, Dante? Alessio shouted. Catch! He threw the book. But he didn't throw it at Dante. He threw it high into the air, over the fence, into the neighbor's yard where a massive bonfire was burning from a late-night party. No! Dante screamed, his eyes following the arc of the black leather. For a split second, Dante and his men looked away, watching the book sail through the air and land in the heart of the flames. That split second was all Alessio needed. Get down, he yelled, pulling Sofia to the ground behind the stone angel. Marco opened fire. The chaos was instant. Dante's men fired blindly, their bullets chipping away the stone wings of the angel, sending stone dust into the air. Alessio returned fire from behind the statue, his shots calculated and precise. But then, sirens wailed. Not one or two, dozens. Blue and red lights flooded the street, cutting through the darkness. Police! Drop your weapons! Hands in the air! Dante looked around, panic setting in. He had been so focused on the mob war, so blinded by the book, he hadn't noticed the trap. You called them? Sofia asked Alessio, shouting over the noise of the helicopter overhead. I texted a contact while we were digging, Alessio yelled back. I told them Dante Moretti was trespassing with automatic weapons. I gave them him on a silver platter. But the book, Sofia cried. It's gone. You burned the leverage. Let it burn, Alessio said, looking at her with a fierce intensity. It was poison, Sofia. It killed my grandfather. It ruined your family. It corrupted mine. Let it burn. Dante tried to run, but he was tackled by a SWAT team before he made the fence. His men surrendered, dropping their rifles. As the police swarmed the yard, Alessio stood up, pulling Sofia with him. He quickly holstered his gun and wiped the dust from his tuxedo. He looked like he had just left a wild party, not a shootout. We need a lawyer, Sofia said, looking at the approaching officers. We have the best lawyers, Alessio said calmly. And we have no book, no evidence, just a trespassing dispute that got out of hand. Dante has the automatic weapons. We are just victims. He took her face in his hands, ignoring the chaos around them. Are you okay? Sofia looked at him. She was covered in dirt, her feet were bleeding, and she had almost died 3 times in the last 4 hours. She had never felt more alive. She smiled. I'm still waiting for that $7,000. Alessio laughed. He kissed her. It was a desperate, passionate kiss, sealed with the dust of the garden and the promise of survival. 6 months later, the Ristorante Bartolomeo was busier than ever. The clatter of silverware and the hum of conversation filled the air. Sofia walked through the dining room, but she wasn't wearing an apron. She was wearing a cream business suit that screamed authority. She stopped at table 4. Is the wine to your liking, gentlemen? She asked. Alessio D'Amato looked up from his plate of osso buco. He smiled. The owner has excellent taste. Sofia sat down opposite him. She had bought the restaurant with anonymous investment capital 3 months ago. Paolo was running the kitchen. Turns out, his anxiety made him an excellent expediter. He hadn't touched a card in 6 months. I have a complaint, though, Alessio said, his voice dropping to that familiar, dangerous purr that still made her shiver. Oh? Sofia raised an eyebrow. Is the service too slow? My wife is working too hard. She needs a vacation. I was thinking Capri. I'm not your wife yet, Alessio, she corrected, tapping the massive diamond ring on her finger. The wedding is next week. Details? Alessio waved his hand dismissively. He leaned forward, his eyes twinkling. Say it. Sofia rolled her eyes, but she smiled. She leaned in until their foreheads touched. Tu sei una capatosta, she whispered in Neapolitan. You are a hard head. And you, Alessio replied, kissing her hand. Si, a vita mia. You are my life. The waiter brought the check. Alessio reached for it out of habit, but Sofia snatched it away. This one's on the house, she said, winking. But leave a good tip. The waitress is new. Alessio laughed, the sound ringing out through the restaurant, no longer dark and lonely, but full of life. He had lost the black book. He had lost the leverage over the city. But he had won the only thing that mattered. He put a stack of hundreds on the table anyway. Old habits die hard. And so, the waitress who stood up to the wolf became the queen of the pack. Sofia and Alessio proved that sometimes, the most dangerous bet is the one you make with your heart. The Libro Nero is gone, burned to ash, but the empire they built on trust is stronger than any blackmail could ever be. They chose love over power, and in the Mafia world, that is the ultimate victory. What did you think of Sofia's choice? Should they have kept the book and taken total power? Or was destroying it the only way to be truly free? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this Mafia romance saga, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. I have a darker, steamier werewolf romance coming next week that you won't want to miss. Thanks for watching.